Hong Kong for the last generation.
I'm BabyMorshaw.com, the Republican candidate for governor.
Have sexual relations with
I realized that this was something he isn't
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, good morning. This is Steve Hickson with Backfire.
Have a lot, Steve.
John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
And Daniel Brantley, our chief engineer. How's everybody been this week?
Been a good week so far.
Enjoyed the weather?
It's fine.
I had a good time. I've been going all week. Hadn't read a newspaper hardly, looked at television.
Is that retirement? Is that what that
That's
flight?
only retirement's getting in my way. Oh. Hey, I was reading here that Cleveland is going to be voting for liquor stores.
That's what they say.
What's your opinions about liquor stores in Cleveland, Tennessee?
I support it.
Well, I'm torn between giving a pragmatic answer of, we're already selling beer, we're already got liquor by the drink, we're losing the tax dollars. But then I kind of feel like I'm back at Sunday school and saying, when we talk about how our culture and how our life's going in this country, and we wonder how deranged little maniacs go into schools and kill a bunch of people, it's probably because we give in to our I'm tired of fighting mode and just go, well, okay, we'll accept that, and then we'll accept the next thing, and then the next thing.
So you're telling me?
I think it's a shame that we're to the point where, and I think it'll bring other things. I hate to lose the tax dollars. You can make all kinds of common sense arguments for it, that it doesn't really make any difference. People are drinking anyway. They're driving to Ottawa. But you can make those arguments for almost every change to our moral fiber.
Well, John, our battery-operated car will get to a liquor store if we have one in Cleveland. It wouldn't make it to Chattanooga and back, would it?
Oh, that's probably true.
Well, drunk driving fatalities are lower in Cleveland now than they were before we had liquor by the drink.
Isn't that amazing?
Maybe people just actually were
correlated either, though.
No, but it does suggest that it did not bring the
I didn't
ills
mean
that
that.
you're talking
I
about.
wasn't even talking about that. It brings a certain criminal class with it usually. In most communities, when you add liquor package stores, you see a bump up in a lot of different types of crime. It brings a different element and a different character to the community.
What do you think that is?
I said this before we talked about it. That may not be a causal association. That may not be fair on my part, because what generally happens is package stores come as a community gets bigger and bigger, and the crime that comes may not actually be associated with the liquor store. It may be associated with the growth in size. So, I'm trying to be objective here, but I don't drink much at all. It wouldn't bother me if it wasn't that available. So, you always have that argument. And, we're going to get into gun control at some point today, I'm sure, and I'm going to make a point that a lot of it's a lifestyle argument. The people that are for confiscating guns don't have guns as part of their lives, so it's not a big deal to them, and it's always easier to do away with someone else's rights that you don't really care about. So in the liquor argument, I don't drink, so it doesn't bother me as much.
Well,
and when someone out there's like, when I say I don't drink, I don't mean I don't take a drink. It don't mean I can't have a drink, haven't had a drink. It's just not a significant part of my life.
Not a major thing to you. Well, I think that it'll hurt Chattanooga.
It'll hurt Ottawa is what it'll hurt.
Well, we already have liquor stores in Polk County now.
That's true.
We have liquor stores in McMinn County now.
Ottawa.
Yeah. So,
it'll probably pass.
It'll bring some tax revenue that we don't have coming in now. So,
Well, we don't need that with about 6 to 8 million extra that they just levied on us by the city council.
Yeah, Franklin said he went to a sidewalk meeting last night.
No, Lisa was there.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about that meeting.
Apparently, they've for the last couple of years have been applying for some grants from the federal government that
Which
would allow
is
them,
more of our tax dollars.
which would allow them to tie into the greenway and create more pedestrian walk space. Supposedly, and I haven't seen the exact numbers, but they at least say that they're getting about 80% of a project from a federal grant and 20% from local money that's gone in. And that's going to create sidewalks that go from Keith Street to Ocoee Street on 17th Street. And then in this
From Keith Street to Ocoee Street, okay.
yeah. And then also, I think from Harrell Avenue all the way past Mayfield, almost to, I think, Neely Drive, Neely Circle there. And that's to open those areas up because apparently we have a lot of children these days who are walking to school there. It is a dangerous area there. But that also will allow them to tie into more greenway space. And
the only thing I would like to point out in that is, and this isn't a criticism, Franklin, we do this all the time on the local level. We make that designation where we go, hey, only 20% of this is actual local taxpayer dollars. I'm sorry, that's BS, because the federal money is our money too. The fact that no, I'm not arguing, Franklin. I just don't, people go, oh, it's only costing us 20%. No, you're paying the other 80% too.
Well, that's not entirely true, though, here. And that's one of those reasons.
You're going to talk about how much we pay in, how much we get back. Well, you know what? Then I'm going to say that's not fair to whoever's paying more and getting less.
I'm glad you're looking out for them. But locally, I'll take it.
Well, of
course. I think it's a good thing for the community.
The sidewalks probably, I mean, they're fine. Some people are going to say no. They're going to lose because the government's going to go eminent domain on them, and they'll go to court and they'll still lose. They might get a little bit extra payment out of the city.
And they may also get improved property values from it as well.
Well, I know they need the sidewalks on 20th Street. I see people walking up and down through there.
It's very dangerous.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is trying to establish some kind of grid system, basically, with the greenway, so that more people have safe access to get to the greenway. Actually, down there by Mayfield, that's a connector. There's one going under 25th Street, which is a horrible street to cross. Certainly, you don't want children crossing that. So there's going to be an underground connector there, and it all will circle around and connect.
You know, one of the things you said that really struck is important, I think, is the kids walking to school. I wish they'd do the sidewalks in places where kids would be able to utilize them more and walk to school. You know, when I grew up, down behind the post office, we had the trail that went through there that we all used from Emmett Avenue area, all those streets over there, all those kids, we rode bicycles and walked to school. It was amazing. And they used that trail coming down through, and it worked great. I don't know why they did away with it. But anyways, I think some of these kids walking to these schools, if the sidewalk is needed to make that happen, I think that's good.
Well, it may be the only sunlight some of the kids see.
They're walking to school already. Quite a lot of them. If you pass Mayfield in the morning, a lot of what the traffic control officer is doing is holding traffic back for kids crossing the street there.
I was reading here, 23 stores closed for alleged sale of marijuana-derived candy in Murfreesboro.
Well, that'll be after the liquor referendum is passed. That'll be the next, they're doing it anyway. That's my point.
Well, that requires state action.
Yeah, but my point is, as a culture, we get tired, and we just start going, okay. And then it's easier to go, okay, on the next one.
Well, I just thought that anybody in Murfreesboro, 23 stores selling marijuana-derived candy. I can't imagine anybody taking the nerve to do that.
Well, why would you be surprised? They're legalizing it. That's the movement now. It's legal in several states. That gets all kinds of media attention. The millennial generation goes, oh, this is great. You know, the millennials are doing all these holier than thou commercials about the tobacco companies while at the same time going, yay, let's legalize marijuana, which is more carcinogenic than tobacco.
Well, I know that I can tell John's keyed up to talk about this gun in schools and all this, so let's go ahead and just talk about that and get it over with. What do you think? What can we do?
There's a lot of things you can do. If we could have a rational conversation based on what's been shown to work and what's been shown not to work, we might get somewhere. You've actually got legislation being put forward by mostly Republicans now that might actually make an impact.
Well, tell me what do you think?
Well, for example, there's one of the survivors of the Columbine massacre in Colorado that's a state legislator. He's been very active on a lot of this. He does not support gun restrictions because it wouldn't have made any difference with those. Those boys actually, there were, I believe, 23 different laws they were in violation of when they bought those guns or got the guns. Wouldn't have passed background checks. They got around it, and they violated 23 laws doing it. I don't think a 24th law would have made a difference. But, for example, they have now in Colorado instituted an app, a See Something, Say Something app, where kids can actually go on. If they see something, it goes straight to law enforcement, and it might help make a difference. It certainly will make reporting much, much easier. The president just yesterday announced that he is instructing the ATF to outlaw the bump stocks. Now, personally, I don't care because, to be honest, if you know anything about how guns function, you can do bump stock shooting by hooking your thumb in the belt loop of your pant. I mean, I don't think it'll make a difference, but by the same token, I don't know why you need the bump stock. If a machine gun's illegal, you probably don't need that. It really won't stop someone from using the gun in the same fashion. But that's President Trump, which, by the way, the ATF under President Obama actually gave the designation that allowed bump stocks to be sold. So President Trump has instructed them to do that. You know, you don't hear the media running 24/7 about how Republicans in these states, how the president is doing this. All you hear is we need a assault weapons ban, which, by the way,
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Okay.
The semi-automatic.
Yep.
And I'm correct in what I say when I say semi-automatics that are being sold are being sold to hunt with.
The AR-15 is the most popular rifle design in the country right now. It's being now modified and expanded to all kinds of hunting calibers. They use the 223 that we're talking about for mostly varmint hunting, for coyotes and things like that. But you can now buy a variant in 308, which makes it acceptable for deer hunting. You can buy a variant in 6.5 Creedmoor, which makes it
well, let me ask you something. When you're hunting and you take a shot at a deer, is it fair to sit there and just take 20 shots at a deer? I mean,
well, I've never had to take 20 shots at a deer. Most times.
But why do they have the semis in hunting? You know,
well, first off, I hunt with a Winchester 100, which is a semi-automatic 308 that was designed probably in 1959.
Sure.
I mean, it's a 60-year-old. Semi-automatics have been around since the 40s.
I understand.
So, and actually you bring up a really good point, because if you say that we're going to ban the AR-15 because it's semi-automatic, you're going to ban my walnut-stocked Winchester 100 308 because mechanically there's no difference. The only difference with what they call an assault rifle is instead of a walnut stock, it's got a plastic stock on it. For example, they actually use the designation for an assault rifle that it has a pistol grip. Well, I've never hunted with a rifle with a pistol grip. But my point is, my rifle is just as deadly without the pistol grip, and the cosmetic things that they actually use to identify an assault rifle have nothing to do with the way the rifle functions.
Well, how do you think that with all the people in protest, these children being killed,
I think the children are being manipulated.
All the people in Las Vegas being shot, what should we do to help curb the what people think, John? I know what you're saying from an NRA, but you've got a lot of people that are coming down on this, and they want some kind of changes. So what can you give them?
I just gave you some. We could. There's Senator Cornyn from Texas has had a fix the NCIS bill, NICS bill, for several years now. The Democrats actually won't get on board with it. We're trying to make sure, for example, the states. I can give you a list of the mass shootings that were all allowed because the government didn't do what it's already required by law to do. We don't have states putting mental health issues into the system, which, by the way, I will mention to you that 25, 30 years ago, a lot of these mental health patients were in institutions. But the same social progressives right now that are demanding gun control are the ones that demanded that we close the institutions and quit institutionalizing crazy people. So they're the ones that push these people out on the streets.
We're putting too many crazies in? Is that what it was?
Well, Franklin can talk, and he really should talk, because the Fourth Amendment is important in this discussion. But you're going to have a balance between our rights and the broader community's safety.
Well, a lot of people are not familiar with guns like you are, and they sit there and they see these mass shootings, and they think something needs to happen. So what can happen to appease someone?
Okay. You notice I let John just talk there.
You did.
Okay. All right. Your turn, Franklin.
John started off by talking about, well, if we could just have some balance and common sense. All right? I think most people would line up behind that. I think there are some common sense things. I'll start with the things that Republicans say they're for, but have acted differently on.
All right. Go ahead.
All right? Why can't we allow some access to some mental health records that would prevent some people from buying them? Does that mean some people won't fall through the net? No, but it means fewer people will. Just a year ago, the president signed legislation that restricted the NCIS from accessing certain mental health records in the federal Social Security disability system. That meant there are at least 75,000 more people in America today who are eligible to buy things who wouldn't have been otherwise. Now, again, John's correct. Some of those might have gotten through the safeguards, but a lot of them wouldn't. To me, this kid got this gun, as I understand it, legally in Florida.
He was 17.
But it's a strange.
No, he was over. He
was
19.
18. But there's a strange loophole in Florida. He was not eligible to buy a handgun at age till 21 there, but he could go buy this weapon.
Yeah, but he had 9 handguns.
That
I'm not arguing with you. I'd actually like to know the answer to that. They keep glossing over that. You're right.
That doesn't make any sense.
But he had I think 7 or 8 handguns, and no one has said how in the hell did he get the handguns, because he's actually not supposed to be able to buy those till he's 21.
So that ought to be looked at. All right. Now, I know John's something of an absolutist on the Second Amendment.
Actually,
let me finish, okay? All right. I'm not an absolutist on any of these amendments to the Constitution. I mean, we restrict and regulate the right to vote all the time. I mean, that we make decisions that as a society should do something like that. I absolutely agree that that bump stocks have no legitimate purpose in a civilized society. None. Now, are there ways of getting around it? Maybe. But that doesn't mean everybody who might use them would get around them. The fact that something's not 100% effective isn't in and of itself a reason not to talk about some reasonable
then let's
steps.
talk about those
Hold on, let me finish. I'm not done.
Well, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay? Now, John's got this he talks about how the AR-15 is just like other guns. The fact is, it was designed with the intent of having a military use. Why? Not just because you can pull the trigger at the same rate, but because the way it's designed makes it easier to point and shoot without having to bring it up to your eye to aim in the same way.
I hate to break it to you,
That's
Frank.
true.
Every gun designed is designed to make it easier to shoot. And by the way, almost every gun out there originated as a military weapon.
Guess what? Here's another one. All right? There are several articles written out there because at one point, before the Vietnam War was over, the military was considering moving to the AR-15 design at that point. They did not do it at that point. They subsequently looked at it and discovered that the number of enemy casualties would have been significantly higher if they had had that design that they were using. The point of that is not to say that everybody who uses an AR-15 is evil, but it is to say that it is something that makes it easier to have these types of mass shootings. Doesn't mean you can't do it another way.
Okay, let's talk about mass shootings. Stopping mass shootings.
All right.
What do we have to do to stop mass shootings?
All right, let me throw something out though that really should.
I mean, legally, you say laws are not being used. I want to know how we stop mass
let me
shootings.
throw something out though that gets lost in this whole argument. So you all want to talk about mass shootings? Okay.
I just want to know
This
how
is
we
the
can
FBI.
curb them.
This is the FBI 2015 report, and that's about the newest report we had. All rifles, not AR-15s, but all rifles combined, accounted for 374 murders.
No doubt handguns would be more.
Now, hang
No
on.
doubt.
That's my point. 374 murders. Now, you're right. Our problem here is the media and the perception. When you kill 17 people in one thing, it gets people's attention and they get outraged. But wait a minute.
How many was killed in Las Vegas?
59?
Yeah, 59, I think.
Okay.
But handguns account for 7,000. So rifles are 374, handguns are 7,000. But for a little perspective, knives are 1,600. Knives kill almost 5 times as many people as
Guess
all
what?
rifles do.
There are actually regulations about that.
Well,
too.
fine. Hands and feet and fists kill 656. So hands and feet account for twice the number of murders per year as all rifles, not AR-15s, but all rifles. By the way, Dylan Roof in the church shooting used a handgun. By the way, the San Bernardino killers who used an AR-15, California has the strictest gun control laws in the country. California and Illinois
John?
account for the largest percentage of murders with firearms of either state, and both of them have the strictest gun control in the country.
John,
What?
I think you're taking my question.
No, I just want to make sure people have, the problem is with the question out of perspective, people have a tendency to emotionally react to these mass shootings and go, oh my God, we've got to do something about it. Well, we need to.
They are.
For me, the real problem is, Steve, you went to school 40 years ago. I went to school 38 years ago.
We didn't have a
Franklin
problem.
did. Tell me one of your classmates that shot the classroom up. Tell me any that you remember in your school days of an incident.
The only
like this.
thing that I remember during my era was Teddy Lawson stopped out there at Max on the way to school, and they were looking at a pistol, and it went off, and Teddy was killed right there in the
Well,
spot.
my
But
point
that
is,
was a pistol.
We ought to be worried about what is it in our culture that is creating these little monsters that are willing to go out and kill
we've got
their
a problem.
classmates.
We've got a problem there, but I'm
Sure.
asking.
Well, but I mean,
first
all
of all,
kinds
we
of
got a
things.
call. Let's take a call real quick. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
This is Jeff Yarber.
Jeffrey.
I want to throw a couple of fun facts in there for you as I hear y'all talk. In 2014, China had an attack, but it was a knife attack that killed 33 people and left 130 injured. We had a ban on assault rifles from 2000.
Now, from 94.
1994 to 2004, and they did studies from 1982 to 2004, and the number of attacks from 82 to 2004 was 1.5 a year, and when they did the ban on assault rifles from 94 to 2004, the number of attacks was 1.5 a year.
Actually, that law required the Department of Justice to study its effectiveness, and their official report said it had no effect on mass shootings.
It had zero. It had zero. And just like I said, if you look at the knife attack in China, knives in China are a more prevalent means of attack than our weapons. I mean, our rifles or assault rifles. And that one attack in 2014 killed 33 and left 130 injured.
And by the way, this boy in Florida was online studying how to build a bomb.
And so,
Oh, he was sick. I mean, there's no doubt.
But that's
in
the
my mind.
point. If you had kept him away from that rifle without somebody turning him in, which, by the way, they did turn him in, he would have done something else. The worst school attack in U.S. history happened in 1927, and it was explosive. Matter of fact, most mass murders, the preferred weapon is actually explosives and arson, not guns.
Hey, Jeff, what do you think? What are we going to do?
what we're going to do? Well, believe there's some ties. I don't believe we have a mental health issue. I believe we have a mental health issue as far as not allowing that to be used as a means of not getting guns. But I believe we have a parenting issue and an accountability issue.
Well, we definitely have that.
And I believe that, you have to go back. The good thing is, here's the good thing, the post-millennials, which is my youngest daughter's age group, studies have shown they are a more conservative, so far trending to be a more law-abiding group than we're millennials. So hopefully, parents have decided that accountability is taken into action. When I was in school, kids drove to school with the trucks with the gun racks in the back of the truck, and there wasn't a gun problem then. So it's not a gun problem. It's not a mental health. It's an accountability issue, and it's how we handle raising our children. I believe the video games desensitize our children, and in World War II they used human silhouette.
That's a good idea. You just said something that struck a nerve. Everybody's wanting something done about this stuff. Why don't we just ban video games?
Well, I mean, I was going to make an argument. This boy had obvious mental problems. But can you imagine if you had a clone of this boy and you took him and he got adopted out in the country off the grid and he had to go out and play in the yard, play in the woods like we used to play in the woods, and he didn't have access to these games? What do you think he would be compared to this boy who sat in a hole playing first-person shooter games where he's killing people all day?
My daughters have never owned a video game console. I've made my daughters, play sports and stay active, and they never owned a video game console. I had a video game console years ago, but I wouldn't, even when I had mine as an adult, I wouldn't allow my daughters to play it when they were younger.
I had one, but Pong was hard to get off of the screen and kill somebody with it.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, correct if I'm wrong, in the Florida shooting, the security guards down there weren't allowed to be armed. Is that not correct?
No, actually, one of the victims has actually made that point. He came forward and complained that the media is manipulating and using the kids in their grief. And he said that he's upset that they're not concentrating on the 17 lives that were lost. But he said, as well, the coach, he said, had that coach had a gun, said he was face-to-face with the shooter. And all he could do was shield the kids with his body. Whereas had he had a gun, he could have stopped it. Now, that's one of the victim's statements.
How did the kid get in the school?
Well, no one's answered that either.
Didn't Uber drop him off?
I think so. But here's another interesting point. And I'm going to...
I can't walk in Cleveland High School out there right now.
If you want to be... I'll give you 7 things here that would help. But one of them is armoring the schools. They actually had ballistic windows in that school. And at one point, he saw kids outside running, and he tried to shoot them, and he was unable to shoot through the glass. So the ballistic glass actually saved lives. But Israel had this problem. The Palestinians were attacking them. They instituted where they put armed security in the schools. They put fortified the entrances. They fortified the buses. They put gates up and where everybody was checked. You know how many incidents they've had in the last 40 years since they instituted that? None. Not a single one.
I do believe better gun education. I mean, better, some form of a better check is there, but I do believe, again, it goes back to how we're parenting our kids.
I think it goes back to our culture wider than that, Jeff.
Jeff, a lot of the problems is these kids don't even have parents anymore.
Actually, if y'all want to read some, I should have brought it in. Google Florida Teacher of the Year Facebook post. It's gone viral. She was a Teacher of the Year, but she talks about the way the kids come in and the parents. And she said, we're creating an amoral culture at this point.
Yeah. When I was in school, I was guilty to proven innocent if I had in trouble at school. Now, the reason I went into criminal justice as a major is because I became a substitute teacher, and I saw the teachers had no power. And so I wanted to go to some level where I could hold the children who were at risk more accountable. Because as a probation officer, what I saw was a lack of accountability. The children who were in trouble, I put more parents in jail than I did kids because the kids enabled them. The parents enabled their kids and allowed them to do these things, allowed them to run the streets. And so, we have to, again, I go back to this accountability and teaching our kids how to be accountable for themselves and holding our kids accountable.
All right, Jeffrey, thanks for calling.
I appreciate you.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Another SOS, and you're stressing, and that's the time to check in. I check in to cash, check in. When you have a cash emergency, you check in. We understand the urgency, a check in. To get your loans and more, you gotta check in with your checking to cash. Sure. Walk in, call in, click in, go all in. Check in to cash in, a check in to cash. Your one-stop money shop, check into cash.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or buy today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
Attention, Cleveland area creditors. Are you tired of dealing with debtors that owe you money? I'm Jeff Renfro, and I've owned and operated Financial Recovery, a debt recovery specialist here in my hometown of Cleveland for 18 years. We're a licensed and bonded Tennessee collection agency working for a wide variety of creditors, from commercial, manufacturing, physicians, dentists, attorneys, small business owners, to individuals. Look, any kind of business dealing with billing, charge accounts, or even return checks. I know your past due accounts are not a top priority for you, but they would be to me. Let me try to make it easy for you to make a change in the way you've been handling your accounts. There's no contract and no cost to you in most cases, as our fee of only 30% can be added to the balance owed to you. So, whether you have hundreds of accounts monthly and need help with your billing and collection, or you're just an individual and somebody owes you money, let me help you. Give me a call at 400-5376 and I'll come by and see you. That's 400-5376.
Financial Recovery, a licensed and bonded collection agency in Cleveland, Tennessee, 400-5376.
We're here at the Trane Heating and Air Conditioning Testing Facility to see how unstoppable their products really are.
Inside this climate chamber, it's raining incredibly hard on this Trane AC unit. Clearly, it's hard to stop the train.
Ready for a heating and air unit that's been tested in the harshest environments possible? Stop thinking about the other guys and get a Trane. Call Mechanical Systems today to get your home on the road to comfort. 336-5739.
Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop in your cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
Rent to own. Hey, my Clevelanders, it's Fro. If you need to fill up some rooms in your home, but you don't have a lot of dough, you'll see my friends at Economy Rentals for a washer and dryer set for only $19.95 a week, or 2 rooms of furniture for your living room and bedroom for only $39.95 a week. Hey, 35 years in business, Economy Rentals is Cleveland's oldest family-owned rent-to-own store. Free delivery and setup. Economy Rentals. Rent-to-own, make it easy to own. Inventory reduction sale. Hey, mention you heard it on Whoop and get 10% off all bedding. Economy Rentals. That's 901 Sahara Drive or call 472-6105. Visit them on the web at economyrentals.net. 901 Sahara Drive or 472-6105.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we've been talking while we was on break. I want to bring this question out and let everybody, I keep hearing that we've got laws on the books now to prevent things like these mass shootings from happening. Everybody keeps saying we've got laws. I'd like to know what laws we have to keep these things from happening. And, you were talking about...
the Columbine boys violated over 24 federal laws when they got their guns.
First of all, that may be true. However, our computer capabilities are dramatically higher than they were in 1999 when the Columbine massacre.
If it's inputted into the computer.
That's correct. And you're never, ever going to get a system that nothing ever falls through the cracks. Well, but that is not an argument for not improving things.
Yeah.
Actually, it is an argument. If the system is not functioning, putting more responsibility on the same broken system won't make a difference.
Well,
Franklin.
it is true. You probably have to invest some tax dollars in creating a better system.
I mean, if you're out of gas, Franklin, putting new tires on the car is not going to make a whole hell of a lot of difference.
Let me say something. I think President Trump is a law.
Well, he just put forward, I just saw the headline behind you, that he is considering raising the legal ownership age up on people. And people like me, I will argue a little bit from the standpoint, you're going to send a boy to Afghanistan at 18 and put a gun in his hand, but you're going to tell him he can't own a gun here until he's 21. However, having said that, I'm not sure.
He's being trained before he goes to Afghanistan.
I agree. And I'm not sure when you couple it with the idea that we've actually got studies saying that our kids are adolescents now until they're 26 to 30, maybe that's not a bad idea. Because you're not actually taking away their right to own a gun. You're actually saying we're just going to make sure you're old enough to be mature about it.
That's right. All right, let's take another call. Go ahead, caller, you're live.
Well, I'd like to ask Franklin, what computer system did the principal and the school teachers at that school in Florida need to identify that boy as a troubled mind? They had firsthand knowledge.
Well, it's my understanding that they did report that information.
Who would they report it to?
Done nothing.
Well, I think there's, in fairness to John's point, there's some evidence that the FBI, he was on their radar, and they really hadn't very aggressively followed up on that information.
What do you mean aggressively? They had a guy tell him he's got guns, he's crazy, and he wants to shoot a school up.
A moment ago, you said if we could have a balanced conversation, and I just agreed with something you said, and you criticized me for it.
Don't say aggressively. They didn't follow up at all. They didn't. They actually admitted it went nowhere.
Okay.
All right, well, every time something happens, it's a mistake because somebody didn't do something.
Well,
Now,
by the
what
way,
do we got to start doing to make sure we do it?
Well, first off, you have to. I'll give you 7 things that the problem is these don't involve gun control. But first off, you should have metal detectors in every school.
Okay.
We have them in courtrooms. We have them all at the airport. Unfortunately, now, don't get me wrong. I'm sad that that's where we're at as a culture. But you should have a metal detector, and you should funnel everybody through it, and that should be the only access point to the school. You should enforce everything. And that sounds weird, but we don't enforce everything.
When you say everything, what do you mean?
Well, it's, for example, the Air Force in the Texas school shooting just a few months ago didn't report that guy's convictions for domestic abuse. Now, they're required to, But they didn't.
Right.
And that's why he was able to buy a gun and shoot the people up in Texas. So you've got to enforce everything. We should be doing active shooter drills in the school. And as soon as you say that, all the gun control people are going to go, oh, my God, you're going to shake the kids up. Well, guess what, folks? We do active tornado drills in the school. Guns have now killed more people than tornadoes do in schools. So we should be doing active shooter drills. The kids should know how to barricade a door. They do this in Israel. They train the kids. You've got to barricade that door within 20 seconds. The kids also have to be taught to, when you reload, there is a few seconds that gun is down. We've got to teach our kids not to be victims. We've got to teach our kids to pick up a chair and hit that guy over the head.
John, you're asking an awful lot.
You know what, Steve? I'm seriously stunned by that. What I'm asking is that we not be victims and we survive.
Well, these are still kids. Grammar school. You going to teach grammar school how to do this?
I hate to break it to you, but 150 years ago, when the kid went out and played in the woods, he had to know how to survive from the wolves and the bears. This is a skill we've lost. And the fact that someone as worldly as you has lost sight of the concept that the world has always been like this. The threat is different.
I think the world has changed. I think we've got a lot more evil.
Well, that makes my point even more important, and yet you're still resistant to it.
I'm not resistant. I'm just saying you're asking a lot.
I look at this as...
I'm going to say something. You know what? You can't line them up out there and have shooter training.
Israel does. All right, reinforce the doors, windows, and buses and locks. Recruit retired military and law enforcement people to volunteer in these positions. Most of them already have concealed carry laws. We need armed people in the schools. Israel has armed teachers in the schools. Now, I don't mean everybody. It needs to be a very small number. And I will tell you, in Texas, for example, there's a sheriff down there that actually went on the TV and talked about this. They've had it in place for 4 years. All employees undergo extensive active shooter and firearms training with the state. They also undergo mental health evaluations. They receive a marshal designation from the state of Texas, and they are required, just like a deputy, to re-up that certification every 2 years with additional training and firing training as that. And they put signs up at the outside of their schools that tell people their staff are armed and they are prepared to do whatever they have to do to protect their children.
Well, I'm for that. I think more so than training the kids. I mean, you can train the kids how to do some things, but I think you're going to have to arm a few teachers, and you're going to have to block them at the doors. That's it. Nobody knows who's got guns.
I'll just be honest with you. I guess I'm stunned that because I taught my kids this. I guess I'm crazy because I said, look, you get in a situation like this, you look around, you find a weapon, you find something to defend yourself with.
Well, maybe the parents ought to do that to their kids.
My point is, I did that on my own with my one child and my second child. I don't understand why having us as a institution recognize, just as Franklin said in the break, that over the last 20 years, these incidents have escalated. Why would it be, oh my gosh, we can't train the kids to be prepared, not to be a victim? We are training a culture to be victims. They're victims of everything. You know, Sony Pictures had to apologize because the Peter Rabbit animated movie shot a blackberry at the bad guy, knowing that he was allergic to blackberries. They've actually changed the movie and issued an apology. We are training a culture of victims in this country.
All right. Franklin, you got anything you want to talk about this morning?
Sorry.
There are things that virtually, 95% of Americans agree on. If those things don't get done, it's not because of the Constitution, it's not because of serious political opposition, it's because some people have too much influence. That's just the facts.
Why don't you say it? You mean the NRA?
Yeah, I do in this case.
Let me give you a good example of how this conversation can't go. The New York Daily News ran a full-page headline the CNN actually ran the headline, the Associated Press ran the headline that the NRA trained this shooter. Now, that was the headline. NRA trained the shooter.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, look it up.
But I do know this. Study after study after study shows that between 75 and 90% of Americans support enhanced background checks.
And the NRA has supported that as well.
No, they have not.
Yes, they have. The background system was actually their system. They pushed it through Congress. And the Democrats actually opposed it.
Since then.
They have not opposed it. They've opposed things, for example, where if you have someone that
a background check, you really can't do anything in a background check anymore because of the laws. I remember down at the Elks Lodge, they used to be able to do a background check, and basically, if you had bad credit, you didn't get in.
Well,
hey, 3 blackballs from the membership, you didn't get in.
Let me finish what I was getting at with the NRA stories. Look it up, Franklin. They ran the headlines. Here's where that's based on. The NRA gave a $10,000 grant to the junior ROTC program in that high school, which they do all over the country. And they gave it for their shooting program. The shooting program is indoor pellet guns using plastic BBs. So because they gave $10,000, the press was willing to smear the junior ROTC program in order to smear the NRA. But here's what they didn't tell. 2 of those ROTC boys led a group out, and when they realized they were moving into the line of fire, they put everybody back in the classroom. They rounded more people up into the classroom. They took Kevlar curtains down and formed a bulletproof barricade. By the way, the Kevlar curtains were probably purchased with NRA funds. That didn't get told. Worse than that, and this one is really disgusting, one of the NRA, or one of the ROTC boys, who was obviously benefited from the NRA, got to the door. He stopped and held the door for more people to get through it, and he was killed. So one of the victims who benefited from the NRA donation was killed because he was holding the door for more people. They didn't tell that part of the story.
I think we can go on and on and on.
Well, but my point is, people like me, when you hit me with that, and you hit me with the 18th, this is the 18th shooter, which is a blatant lie, then I immediately lock down and go, I'm not having a discussion with you if you're going to smear things like that.
This is the NRA's legislative action website. The NRA opposes expanding firearm background checks. Period.
Frankly.
They are opposed to it. Now, look, you can take that position. I'm just saying, that's not my position. I think it should be expanded. I think most Americans.
Let me tell you, actually, I'm surprised because I don't know if he doesn't know this. What they were opposed to the expansion that it's talking about was when the Democrats tried to put everybody on the no-fly list on the banned list.
I'm
for that too.
All right, what Fourth Amendment rights did those people have?
You just create a due process.
They don't have it in
for them to appeal.
But they don't have it in the no-fly list.
But you can support that,
Franklin. The no-fly list.
That's not complicated.
Ted Kennedy was on the no-fly list.
It's not complicated to have an appeals process.
I'm amazed that a civil libertarian like yourself is willing to be that.
First of all, I'm not a libertarian, number one. Number two, there's no problem with making sure that due process is protected. Just create that in the system.
They didn't do that in that law.
But you could now.
Franklin, my point is the law.
The technology should allow it now, right?
They didn't want to do that. They just wanted to take the list and put it on the banned gun.
I understand they did back then, John.
It was a year ago. John. It was only 2 years ago.
It's been going on forever.
Maybe
Trump can fix it.
That bill was 2 years ago.
Trump can fix it?
I don't know whether he can fix it or not.
Well, you know he can.
For example, Steve, you took care of your mother for years.
Yeah.
There are people on Social Security whose children say, well, I'm going to take care of your finances. If they did that, that bill would have taken away their Second Amendment rights. Now, maybe mentally there was a reason, but if all you have is financial control.
We have to use common sense and get some of these things done.
You're not using common sense would tell you that these boys should have been reported to the system. You can't protect their identity.
What do we got to do to protect this? You've
got to get the states to report the things they're not reporting. You've got to get for example, I'll give you a good example.
Crazy.
If you were in charge of the FBI, I guarantee you that
I'd fire them all right now.
I was going to say it. Now, wait a minute. That's my point. They know who took this call and didn't pass it forward. Why hadn't he been publicly fired already?
I don't know.
And I guarantee you, a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now, we still won't know who he is.
Well, let's get into something else here. What about the FBI? What's going on with the FBI right now?
They've dropped a lot of balls lately.
You know, I'm going to make a Hickson prediction. Are y'all ready? You know, I made the Hickson prediction when we elected Trump. The Hickson prediction is the FBI will take the hit for Obama and Hillary. The investigation's over. The Russians have been found.
Huh? What?
The Russians have been found. We've been looking for Russians for a year and a half. The Russians have been found.
We indicted 13 of them this week.
I know. The Russians have been found. We indicted them right after these 72 kids were killed. They brought this out immediately so they knew it get washed
you think
under.
They did that to screen themselves?
I know they did. And let me say something. The FBI will take the hit for Obama because I think Obama was being drug into these investigations with Hillary, and I think they're both guilty, and I think it's going to die with the FBI's taking the hit, and the investigations are over.
It did start in 2014, and the press is having a hard time defending why President Obama didn't do something. This happened on his watch,
I'm telling
not
you,
on Trump's.
Hickson prediction, the investigation's over with. The FBI's taking the blame.
Tell us what you think. 614-5553.
What about...
Let me throw out one other thing. There's also several Republican legislatures have also in some states put in protective laws on actually guns. If you get a protective order because a spouse is abused, you can't have guns. Okay, so what they've done is they've expanded that, and they've allowed family and perhaps even teachers to say this child or this individual is a danger to himself and to the society, and you can have temporary loss of your gun rights.
Let me ask you something, John. You drive a car, we all drive cars.
Mm-hmm.
Your driver's license is considered a privilege, okay? If you abuse the privilege to drive a car, they take your privilege away.
Right.
Guns, the same way?
No. You know why?
Why?
Because driving a car is not written into the Constitution. A gun is not a privilege. A gun is a right.
But if they abuse their privilege to have a gun.
But it's not a privilege. That's your problem. It's not a privilege. It's not comparable to a car because it's not a privilege. It's a right.
In my world, I'm going to call it a privilege.
Well, you can call it whatever you want.
You wouldn't make that same argument for voting, though.
I didn't say regulated. He said
take
it away.
We do take
guns are more regulated than probably anything.
We take voting rights away from people.
I will bring in. I tell you what. Next week, I will bring in a total number of the gun regulations on the books.
You're a policeman. You pull into a domestic dispute.
Mm-hmm.
The husband's got his pistol out. He's threatening to blow his wife's head off.
Mm-hmm.
The police come. They save the day.
Mm-hmm.
They take the gun away from the guy.
Right.
What happens?
If they go to court and get a protective order, it stays away.
Okay.
That's called due process.
All right. That's what I'm talking about.
But you're not. No, you're not talking about. Think about this for a second. What you did is you just brought up an individual, and that's an individual punishment. What you all are discussing is a collective punishment for individuals' actions.
No,
you're punishing me.
No, I'm not. I'm saying when I screw up, if I've got a gun and I pull it out and I threaten someone,
that's already on the book.
I know. If I threaten someone,
what do you want? It's already on the book.
Then let's start using it.
That was what I said to begin with. Let's enforce the laws we already have.
John, I'm trying to say, tell me the laws we have that are not being enforced.
That's one of them right there.
Well, let's have a list. Can you make me a list for next week?
I'll bring you here's the problem. I'm not going to bring you a list because I couldn't carry it in the room. There are literally thousands of restrictions on guns.
Okay.
I'll bring you the number next week.
All right. What's going to happen with Comey?
With Comey?
Mm-hmm. FBI Comey.
Well, I don't know. The GAO is conducting that investigation. We'll see.
Do you think anybody at the top of the FBI was incorrect in the decisions they made?
Oh, I think you can argue that there were lots of incorrect decisions made on both sides of that ledger.
How do you run an investigation and not have an investigation, or write the outcome of the investigation?
Well, I
before you have
think
it?
the facts. I think the facts show that they wrote 2 outcomes.
They did
to prepare for that. It's just like before the night of an election.
They did not.
Every president's team writes a victory speech.
Where did you get that? Because I have read absolutely nothing about a version that was written that condemns her.
Okay.
There were about 4 versions.
Well, first of all, the version did condemn her. It just didn't find that she was guilty of a crime.
Like the guy who took a picture on a submarine.
And let's keep in mind before you get into this huge thing, the crime that she was being investigated for was a misdemeanor. It wasn't even a felony.
There is a Navy officer who is in prison right now because he took a picture on a submarine.
False,
that's all.
It does not matter. The statute that she was being investigated for in this case was a misdemeanor.
Hang on a minute. Here's what's interesting about it. In his case, they actually found that there was no ill intent, which was what Comey used to reason she shouldn't be prosecuted, and yet they still prosecuted him because he had the picture on the device that was unapproved. And all he did was take a picture in a submarine.
Okay.
And he's in prison right now.
John, I don't disagree with you on that.
Well, should he be out of prison?
Arguably.
Well, then why is he in prison and she's not? Because she's Hillary Clinton. That's the only reason.
Who prosecuted him?
The government did. The same FBI, the same government prosecuted him for what they turned her loose for. And there's no explanation except that she's Hillary Clinton.
Well, let me ask you this. We know that the Russians got involved in the election, and they tried to do things on both sides now.
Mm-hmm.
But they really thought that Hillary was going to win, did they not?
All the reporting from our intelligence agencies say you can slice it any way you want, but all their conclusions are universal in that regard. Their primary activities were designed to hurt Hillary Clinton.
Right.
That's the fact.
But the reason is because they thought she was going to win. And
Maybe so, but they did not want Hillary Clinton to be president.
No, that's not it. They thought she was going to be president.
They tried to help Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And they tried to help Donald Trump.
And they helped Donald because they thought both of them were going to lose. And the vast majority of their money was actually spent after the election was over. And now we've got a Facebook VP who last week said this was nothing, and they did nothing, and he has now been forced to apologize for saying it was only his opinion they did nothing. You know what they spent?
Now, I frankly don't know why you guys are so angry at Comey, because the facts are, and this is a fact, it's not an opinion.
Okay.
When he came out 2 weeks before the election and made his announcement, he was reopening the investigation.
He was caught.
Whatever reason
he did it to cover his butt.
The facts are, and I challenge you to dispute it, the facts are that's when the polls swung in Trump's direction.
Look, I agree. He's completely incompetent in trying to help Hillary.
You can say he's incompetent, but don't say he's in the bag for Hillary, because he probably did as much as anybody to elect Trump.
He was caught, and he's protecting Obama and Hillary.
By the way, Ken Starr this
past
Ken Starr this past
Obama
week
and Hillary.
made the comment that the results of the Whitewater were 2 were in jail, 2 were dead, and 2 were in the White House. That's how it works for the Clintons.
Well, you know, I think there's a whole lot more that's going to come out of this if the investigation is not stopped.
Why do you want it stopped then? Why don't you want it to come out?
Oh, I don't. I wanted that.
Frankly, I'm surprised. For example, right now, we have a real thought that Flynn, now I'm not saying Flynn's a great guy, but it looks like Flynn was actually railroaded into a false confession by the FBI, really by means of extortion.
Mm-hmm.
They threatened his son because you've got Comey on the record and the 2 FBI agents who interviewed him who said none of the 3 of them felt like he lied to them, and yet he pled guilty to lying to the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
As a lawyer, a defense attorney, does that not bother you?
First of all, I don't know that that's true, number one.
It's in the news. It absolutely is true. It's in their testimony. The 2 agents that interviewed him.
Which news is it in?
The transcripts came out. The 2 agents said we did not feel like he was not truthful in the interview. And then Comey testified before Congress. This is in sworn testimony. And they asked him about it, and he said yes. And then he threw himself in the batch and said, I did not think he gave false testimony.
clearly already know that he lied on his disclosure forms. That's a fact.
But that's not what he pled
I
guilty to.
understand. That's because they haven't gone forward and prosecuted him for that. They've made a deal with him, John, to not prosecute him for that.
Are you okay with
And that was
someone being
clear.
coerced into confessing a crime they didn't do? Are you okay with that as a defense attorney?
Every single day in every prosecutor's office in America. If you plead guilty to this, I won't prosecute you on that.
Franklin, that's not true.
Happens every day.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't. What
Yes, it
happens?
does.
No, when he's done multiple crimes, they will allow him to plead guilty to a lesser crime.
I'm sorry,
You're right
John.
about that. But
You
no
can
prosecutor
feel sorry for Mike
knowingly.
Flynn if you want. He made his own
Franklin,
mess.
no prosecutor on an ethical basis would accept a conviction for a crime they knew he didn't commit. That's a violation, a breach of ethics. Is it not?
Hey, can I say
If you
something?
knowingly know he's innocent and
If
you allow him.
but if you have some doubt.
They testified that he was innocent.
Okay, John.
All right. I guess we've
By the
wound
way,
up another
I don't
week
know if
here.
you're looking behind you. Billy Graham has died.
Oh,
99 years old.
well, I hate that. He's a great man. All right, guys, and we'll see you next week. Backfire will be back. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire.